alive. The hospital staff thought he would be best suited to a senior care facility, which unfortunately was further from his family. Private Parkin's family was living in Oakville, and he didn't want to move away from them. When the grade 7s heard of this story, they decided to send letters of concern to the publisher, who would then draw attention to Private Parkin's situation through the media. Eventually, the government decided that Private Parkin could stay at the hospital closer to his family in Oakville. Unfortunately, a few weeks later, Private Parkin passed away, but he lived his last few weeks in happiness and peace, surrounded by his family that he loved so much. We are fortunate enough this day to have Private Parkin's own son present with us, Mr. Doug Parkin. We will never forget all of the brave soldiers like Private Paul Parkin, who fought for our country. Private Parkin was a man of honor and courage. He will always be remembered in our hearts. Mr. Parkin, we invite you to say a few words to our students, staff, and guests.
Well, it's a little overwhelming for me. I don't think I've talked in front of this many people before. First and foremost, I want to thank the last year's grade 7 class for those letters. My father was very touched and moved on how kids would remember the situation that he went through and his care in the hospital. I thank very much for that, to my family also. My father, he was in his early 20s when he joined the Army in Hamilton Light Infantry. Took basic training in Nova Scotia and around here in Camp Horton, and was shipped overseas. I mean, I can make a long story out of this, his experiences through the war, but he was in the raid in Dieppe in 1942 on August 19th. It was the most terrible situation that anybody could imagine, and back in those days, men and women were not forced to join the Army or asked. They volunteered. They volunteered to put themselves in the most terrible situations to defend and liberate countries overseas and defend our country here in Canada. My father always believed it was always important to remember November the 11th. He never missed a day on November 11th when he attended the services at the Cenotaph in Oakville. He marched in the parades up until he couldn't walk anymore, but he always made sure that he made it to the Cenotaph to pay his respects to his own comrades and friends. He attended last year on August 19th in Burlington. They had a Cenotaph there for war veterans. My father was about in the select few of 30 or more POWs left in Canada. My father was a POW for 3 years in Germany. He was in the raid in Dieppe. He was shot twice, held captive, and he was fortunate he made it back. Some of his friends and commented. So it's very important that we remember that what had happened back in the 1940s, to remember those men who gave their lives to have what we have today, a very fortunate lifestyle, and we shouldn't forget that, and we should appreciate that always. So, in closing, I want to thank you all for having me here to explain a few things about my father. I'm sure he's watching, and I'm sure he appreciates everything that you've done through letters and prayers. That I thank you all very much for having me here for your service.